Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel. Have you ever had that subtle feeling of disappointment in your relationship? The kind where you can't quite articulate what's wrong, but it's definitely there. Today, we're going to explore something really fundamental to how we experience our closest connections. The often invisible power of our expectations in romantic relationships. What are they really? Where do they come from? And crucially, how do they impact our happiness together?
That feeling, that vague disappointment, it's something so many people experience. And yeah, often it does trace back to unmet expectations, those unspoken rules or assumptions we carry around.
Right, things we haven't even maybe said out loud.
Exactly. And when these expectations aren't met, even if we haven't consciously voiced them, well, it can lead to this buildup of negative emotions. Think about that slow burn of resentment, maybe a growing sense of distance from your partner. And eventually, sometimes a feeling of real disillusionment. It takes a real emotional toll.
Absolutely. It's like this quiet erosion happening underneath the surface of the relationship. You might not have had a big fight necessarily, but those repeated instances where our underlying hopes, maybe for understanding or for feeling prioritized, just don't quite materialize. That can really wear us down. It really makes you wonder, where do these expectations even start? What are the key influences shaping what we anticipate in our romantic lives?
Well, one really influential perspective comes from attachment theory. Our very early experiences with our primary caregivers, they essentially create a kind of template for how we expect intimacy to function later on.
A template,
Yeah.
like a baseline expectation.
Precisely. So, for example, if caregiving was inconsistent, maybe unpredictable, someone might develop what we call an anxious attachment style. A key insight here is that this can lead to expectations of, well, almost constant closeness and a really strong need for frequent reassurance in their adult relationships.
Okay, needing that confirmation.
Yeah. And conversely, if early experiences really emphasize independence, maybe discourage showing vulnerability,
Like toughen up.
sort of, yeah, then an avoidant attachment style might develop. And these individuals tend to unconsciously expect or even prefer a significant degree of emotional distance in their partnerships.
Interesting. So polar opposites almost.
In a way. And then there's secure attachment, which typically stems from consistently responsive, attuned, early caregiving. This tends to foster more balanced, flexible, and trusting expectations in adult relationships. Recognizing these patterns in ourselves and maybe in our partners too, that can be a real game changer.
It's fascinating how those early dynamics can just keep playing out,
Mm.
often totally beneath our awareness. And it's not just our past influencing this, is it? Our own thinking patterns right now can also shape our expectations, sometimes in ways that aren't so helpful.
Exactly right. Our thought processes, our cognitive habits can significantly skew what we anticipate. Consider those really rigid should statements we sometimes tell ourselves, like, my partner should instinctively know when I'm upset.
Oh yeah, the mind-reading expectation.
The mind-reading trap, or we should always agree on everything. The key insight here is that these kinds of inflexible rules, they rarely reflect the messy, complex reality of human beings relating to each other, and they can really set us up for unnecessary disappointment.
Definitely.
Similarly, what we call black and white thinking, this idea that things are either absolutely perfect or a complete failure.
No middle ground.
None. It creates an incredibly high and frankly often unattainable standard for both our partners and the relationship itself.
That makes sense. And, if you're finding this conversation resonating, maybe sparking some thoughts, please do consider subscribing to the channel.
Yeah, and we genuinely love to hear your perspectives in the comments too. It's always great to see what listeners are thinking.
Absolutely. So, okay, beyond our personal history and thought patterns, the environment we grew up in, our families, that must have a profound impact too, right? We're essentially watching a live-action relationship model from day one.
You've hit it exactly. The dynamics we witnessed in our families, how conflict was handled or maybe not handled.
Right. Avoid it.
Or exploded. How affection was expressed, the roles each person took on, that all becomes deeply ingrained. For instance, if someone grew up seeing, say, one parent constantly taking on all the responsibility, the overfunctioner, while the other withdrew emotionally,
Yeah, I can picture that.
they might unconsciously expect their own romantic relationships to follow a similar pattern, maybe an imbalance of giving and receiving, almost like love is transactional. These ingrained scripts can operate largely beneath the surface unless we actively start to examine them.
So I've got these really deep-seated influences shaping our expectations. But how do the truly unrealistic ones really take hold? What are some of the maybe cultural or societal factors pushing us that way?
Well, one really significant contributor is the persistent myth of the perfect partner. It's just so prevalent in our media.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Think about the movies, the TV shows, social media feeds. They often portray this partner who effortlessly anticipates every single need. Where love is always easy, conflict is basically non-existent.
Right, the soulmate narrative where everything just clicks perfectly forever.
Exactly. And this creates a really distorted picture. It can lead us to believe that if we just find the one, the relationship should just, seamlessly fall into place without much effort.
It's like we're constantly being shown the highlight reel, isn't it? Without any of the behind-the-scenes footage of the actual work, the compromise, the negotiation that goes into building a strong relationship.
Precisely. That lack of realistic representation of the work involved, as you say, in popular culture, it definitely skews our sense of what's normal or reasonable to expect.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's another layer, too. For individuals who have experienced past trauma, sometimes these unrealistic expectations can actually serve as an unconscious attempt to create a sense of safety and control within intimate connections.
Ah, that makes sense, like a defense mechanism.
Kind of. There might be this deep-seated belief, maybe unconscious, that if I can just anticipate their every move, I won't be hurt again. Or if they always agree with me, then I'll finally feel secure. And while these are totally understandable as coping mechanisms developed in response to difficult experiences,
Yeah.
these kinds of expectations are often unsustainable in a real relationship. And ultimately, they can hinder true intimacy and genuine connection.
Wow. This really underscores why it's so crucial to start thinking about what healthy expectations actually do look like. It's
Right.
definitely not about having zero expectations, right?
Not at all. No, healthy expectations are really about distinguishing between our genuine needs, things essential for feeling safe and connected, and those unrealistic demands we've been talking about, the ones often rooted in fantasy or fear.
Okay, so what's an example of that difference?
Well, a healthy expectation could sound like, I need to feel emotionally present with you when we're talking about something important, and that's something you can communicate openly.
Right, that's a specific need.
Exactly. An unrealistic demand might be the unspoken, maybe even unconscious assumption. You should always intuitively know exactly what I need to feel better without me having to say anything.
The mind reading thing again.
It pops up a lot. Healthy expectations acknowledge the reality that, disagreements happen. They're a normal part of any close relationship. They recognize that people express and experience love in different ways. The whole love languages idea fits here, and that sometimes we all need gentle reminders about what's important to our partners. Emotional availability, for instance. It's an ongoing effort, right? It's a skill we practice, not some constant state of being.
So it's more about flexibility and realism, less about rigid ideals.
Precisely. It's about reality over fairy tale.
Okay. So if someone listening is starting to recognize, maybe I'm holding on to some of these less helpful expectations, what are some concrete steps they can take? How do you start reframing them?
Well, cultivating greater emotional awareness is really the crucial first step. Before reacting to that feeling of an unmet expectation, just take a moment. Pause. Do some self-reflection.
Like hitting pause before you speak.
Exactly. Ask yourself, okay, is this expectation truly about a fundamental need of mine right now? Or is it perhaps rooted more in a fear or maybe a past hurt? Am I basing this expectation on the present situation, on my partner as they are now? Or am I maybe projecting something from my history onto them?
That's a big one.
It is. And importantly, have I actually clearly communicated this expectation to my partner before? Sometimes the answer is simply no. This kind of internal questioning, it creates really valuable space between that initial emotional reaction and how we choose to respond.
Okay, that internal check-in makes sense. And then when it comes to actually communicating these expectations, are there specific strategies that tend to work better to foster understanding rather than, defensiveness?
Absolutely. Using I statements is generally far, far more productive than using accusatory language.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So instead of saying, you never listen to me when I'm talking, which immediately puts someone on the defensive.
Right. Points the finger.
Yeah. Try something like, I feel unheard and a bit unimportant when you're looking at your phone while I'm trying to share something significant with you. See the difference?
Yeah, it focuses on your feeling and the specific behavior, not a character judgment.
Exactly. And approaching conversations with genuine curiosity is also key, instead of making assumptions about why your partner did or didn't do something.
Which is so easy to do.
So easy. Try asking open-ended questions like, help me understand what was going on for you in that moment, or how are you feeling when that happened? It invites collaboration instead of conflict.
Right.
And look, expectations will inevitably go unmet sometimes. That's just human. So focusing on repair afterwards is vital. This involves acknowledging your own emotional triggers, what got activated in you. Creating space to genuinely try and understand your partner's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah.
And prioritizing reconnecting emotionally before you jump into problem-solving mode. Connection first, then solutions.
So it sounds like it's not just about identifying and communicating expectations up front, but also about how we handle those inevitable moments when they aren't met, doing it in a way that actually strengthens the relationship, not damages it.
That's a perfect summary.
Okay. What about broader practices? Things someone can incorporate into their life to really shift those deeper, maybe more ingrained relationship patterns.
Well, practices that encourage self-reflection, like journaling, can be incredibly valuable. Just getting thoughts and feelings down on paper can help explore the origins of your expectations and maybe identify recurring themes or triggers.
Getting it out of your head.
Exactly. Mindfulness practices can also help you become more attuned to your body's signals when a need feels unmet. That physical sensation can be an early indicator that an expectation might have been triggered, allowing you to catch it sooner.
Paying attention to the physical cues.
Yes. And of course, seeking support through therapy, individual or couples, can be immensely helpful in untangling those really deeply ingrained relationship patterns that might be contributing to unrealistic or harmful expectations. And then on a relational level, it's really about consciously working with your partner, co-creating a relationship culture, if you will, where there's enough safety and trust for both of you to openly discuss your expectations.
Talk about what feels difficult, maybe even burdensome sometimes.
Right, and figure out how you can collaboratively work towards meeting each other's core needs in a way that feels realistic and sustainable for both of you. It's an ongoing process, this communication and adjustment. It's not a one-time conversation.
This has provided such a clear framework for understanding what can feel like a really complex topic. It really emphasizes that the goal isn't to somehow magically get rid of expectations entirely. That's probably impossible anyway.
Right.
But it's more about becoming aware of them, communicating them clearly and kindly, and approaching them with a healthy dose of realism.
Exactly. When managed thoughtfully, expectations can actually deepen connection. They can guide us toward what truly matters in the relationship, that feeling of being understood, respected, genuinely cared for. It shifts the focus, maybe, from chasing some idealized version of perfection to valuing presence and authenticity and genuine connection, warts and all.
Presence over perfection.
I like that. Ultimately, successful, thriving relationships are built on a foundation of honesty with ourselves and each other, self-awareness, and that willingness to navigate the inevitable challenges with empathy and open communication. And everyone deserves that kind of love, which, as we've discussed, truly begins with understanding our own hopes and expectations first.
We've definitely covered a lot today, and I know some specific questions might still be floating around for listeners. Let's try and address a few common ones we often hear related to this. First up, how can you really tell if your expectations are generally healthy or if they're leaning towards the unrealistic side?
That's a great question. A good indicator is whether your expectations are 1, openly communicated or at least communicable, 2, allow for flexibility, things don't always go to plan, and 3, are fundamentally based on your current needs and the actual reality of your relationship rather than being rigidly driven by past hurts or those idealized fantasies we talked about.
Okay, so communication, flexibility, reality-based.
Yeah. Unrealistic expectations, on the other hand, tend to be unspoken, often quite rigid, and frequently focused on how you believe things should be, regardless of the current circumstances or your partner's capacity.
Got it. Now, what if you find yourself in a situation where your partner consistently falls short of even what seem like very basic, reasonable expectations in the relationship?
That can be really tough, and it might indicate a significant disconnect, perhaps in core values, maybe in fundamental needs, or even in emotional capacity or willingness at that time. In those situations, seeking professional guidance, perhaps through couples therapy, can be incredibly beneficial. It provides a structured space to explore the underlying issues and figure out the best path forward, whether together or separately.
Okay, that makes sense. Here's one I think many people grapple with. Can you still feel hurt by unmet expectations? Even if intellectually you recognize that those expectations might have been a bit unrealistic in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Our emotional responses don't always neatly align with our rational understanding. Our hearts and heads aren't always in sync.
Right.
It's really important to acknowledge and validate that feeling of disappointment or hurt, even if you understand on a cognitive level, okay, maybe that wasn't entirely fair or realistic. Allow yourself to feel it. Then you can begin the process of gently reframing the situation for yourself and adjusting the expectation going forward.
Validate the feeling first, then reframe. Okay, how can someone start to shift away from expecting their partner to essentially fix their own emotional pain or deep-seated insecurities? That pattern of looking outward for soothing.
That's a really important area for personal growth within relationships. It really starts with recognizing that pattern. Am I consistently relying on my partner to manage my internal emotional state? And while a supportive partner can absolutely offer comfort, understanding, and a safe space, true healing and the management of deeper emotional pain or trauma often requires internal work.
Work you have to do yourself.
Fundamentally, yes. And often seeking support from other sources is key: trusted friends, family, support groups, or significantly, a therapist who can help you build internal resources.
Okay, what about change? Is it reasonable or fair to expect a partner to change certain behaviors in a relationship?
That's a nuanced one. Growth and evolution are natural, even necessary parts of any long-term relationship. We all change over time. So it's absolutely fair and healthy to express your needs and how certain behaviors impact you. When X happens, I feel Y. However, genuine, lasting change itself usually has to be a choice your partner makes willingly from their own motivation, not something you can demand or coerce.
So express the need, but you can't force the change.
Exactly. Express your needs clearly, outline the impact on you and the relationship, and then allow your partner the space to respond and make their own decisions about if and how they want to change.
Right. Okay, last FAQ for now. How can you actually talk about your expectations with your partner without sounding critical or like you're just listing demands?
This comes right back to those communication strategies we touched on earlier. The power of I feel statements is huge here. Frame it from your own experience and approach the conversation with genuine curiosity and a stated desire for mutual understanding, not just getting your way.
So less, you never, and more.
More like, hey, I've been feeling a little disconnected lately when Y happens, and I was hoping we could talk about it. I'd love to understand your perspective too. Or something that would really help me feel more connected is Z. What are your thoughts on that?
Focusing on connection and collaboration.
That's the key. It makes it a shared exploration, not an accusation.
This has been such a valuable exploration, really diving into the often hidden world of expectations in our relationships. It's a powerful reminder, I think, that bringing these unspoken assumptions out into the light through open, honest communication, coupled with that dose of self-awareness and realism, is just essential for building healthy, strong, and lasting connections. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights on this really important topic.
It was my pleasure. It's crucial stuff to talk about.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We sincerely hope this has given you some food for thought, maybe sparked some valuable insights or conversations, both within yourself and perhaps with those you love. Remember, understanding starts within.